Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Tasman District Council Plan Change webinar. Some quick housekeeping just before we get going. We've disabled the cameras and microphones to reduce the strain on the fibre. This means what we'll do with questions, we'll submit them via the Q&A option. Now, if you can't see that on your screen now, which is in the bottom nav bar below, so it's got a little button called Q&A. If that's not visible, look for the circle button. It's got more options, 3 buttons, more and options, and you'll find the enable Q&A right there. Okay, a format for this webinar is fairly straightforward. In a moment, we'll have 2 presentations about Draft Change 1 to the Regional Policy Statement and Draft Change 81 to the Tasman Resource Management Plan, subtitle Urban Growth. And the second presentation addresses the Natural Hazards Issues and Options Report. And all of this follows the just completed district-wide Meet the Planners community engagement drop-in sessions, which were extremely successful and will reflect on some of the action that happened there. Okay, just before we get into things, just to let you know, we'll do the 2 presentations and then we'll get straight into the questions and answers. All right, time then to introduce you to some of the people who are here. First of all, I'd just like to have a shout out there to Glenn and Alistair, who are our 2 TDC specialists, both in natural hazards and in climate change areas there. Also, we have speakers for natural hazards, Paula Hammond. For Regional Policy Change and Future Development Strategy, Jackie Deans, and for PC81, Maya Bengosi and Jeremy Butler, who will now lead off on the presentations. Jeremy, over to you.
Fantastic, thanks, John. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm the Jeremy Butler. I'm the team leader for the Urban and Rural Policy team. I'm just going to do a quick presentation to go through the material we've got for this this policy work that we're doing. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the presentation. And what I'll just flick through, just get it working. There we go. Okay. So what we're going to go through today, we're just going to quick welcome and introductions, which John has kindly done. I'm going to work through the Regional Policy Statement Change 1 and the Tasman Resource Management Plan Change 81, and I'll explain what those terms mean shortly. So we're going to go through a quick overview of the planning system, just so you can understand how this the system works, and then it helps to understand better what these changes will mean, what changes we're actually proposing. Then I'll work through the process and timeframes for that, and then any questions. Although, as John mentioned, we might hold the questions till the end. Why do we need to look at any hazards? That Paula will take you through this aspect for Plan Change 85. Why we're looking at hazards, process and timeframes, and then finally any questions. Okay, so this slide is just a quick executive summary of the Plan Change 81 and the Change 1 to the TRPS. Overall, what are the key changes? They are an overall direction change towards more density for our towns. And overall, we're trying to provide for more homes. That's really the focus of this work. The density for the towns, that's a really important aspect of it that I'll come back to several times. Rezoning of land for homes and businesses for 10 years. So the 10-year time frame I'll come back to as well. Why is that 10-year period important? I'll for that. A new medium density zone for building up. That's really the tool for achieving that greater density for our towns. It's a new zone that doesn't previously exist and which we'll be using for that purpose. We're also doing things for workers' accommodation, making for easier rules for workers' accommodation, easier rules for papakainga, which is intergenerational Māori living, and also there's other consequential changes for modernising transportation and some of our central business rules as well. Okay, going back up to kind of the high level, I just want to go through the Tasman's growth and some of the background to that. So this is a graph that shows the population growth for Tasman since 2000. The vertical blue bars, hopefully you can see my mouse moving, vertical blue bars show the rate of growth per year over that period. And so that's the right-hand scale here. So they show how our growth has been lumpy. We've had some years with more growth, some years with less growth. A few features, 2011 was the Canterbury earthquakes. So we had an influx of people coming up from Canterbury. So that shows as a growth there. And then, of course, 2020, we had a lot of people coming back to New Zealand during COVID. So a big spike in growth there as well. And the darker blue bar here, of course, that's our current population, the population change over time. And that's up to the present day. And then from the present day onwards, this is our projection for the increase in population. We're expecting it to grow at about 1% per year, just a smidgen under 1% per year for the next 10 years. And that takes our population from about 60,000 currently through to about 67, 68,000. So about a 7 or 8,000 person increase over that next 10-year period. So that's really what we're dealing with and something we need to plan for. That population increase is driven by a number of factors, obviously our births and deaths and the relationship between those, but also the level of migration, inward net migration, which is what we experience and what we continue to expect to experience into the future. Okay, so here is just a diagram which describes the future development strategy, or what the FDS is and how it's used and how it affects council work. So the future development strategy is a high-level strategy document that was prepared jointly by Nelson and Tasman District Council. It was adopted in 2022. And it covers the 30-year period from 2022 to 2052. So that document sits here in the diagram, and that adopted FDS doesn't do anything specifically on its own, but it has a really wide range of impacts on a lot of the other work that council does. It informs the strategy of how we're going to grow, how we're going to accommodate our growth. It informs our Tasman regional policy statement. And that's a policy statement. That's a high-level policy statement document prepared under the Resource Management Act, and it predates the FDS. And so, as a result, we need to update that RPS to make it consistent with the RPS. So, again, I'll go over that shortly. The FDS also informs our Tasman Resource Management Plan. This is really the engine room of planning for Tasman. It's the place where all of the zones and the objectives and rules and policies are all put in, and guides a lot of the day-to-day impact of our planning system. The FDS also is used to inform our infrastructure strategy. What infrastructure are we going to build and where are we going to build it? Of course, that needs to be linked to or based on our growth strategy. Our 10-year plan, so council's expenditure plan for the next 10 years, that also needs to be based on our growth strategy. And finally, aspects such as our regional transportation plans, of course, are based on our growth as well. Okay, so what does the FDS actually say? As I say, it was adopted in 2022, and it said that the strategy for our growth is to consolidate that growth along State Highway 6. And that's really our key transportation corridor, which run with that growth occurring from Atawhai right down through to Wakefield, remembering this was a joint document with Nelson City. So that was really the key aspect of the strategy, but then it was recognised that providing for growth over on the western side of Tasman Bay, Mapua and Motueka specifically, to accommodate the population pressures in those areas, there needed to be some growth there as well. Intensification was a very strong aspect of the FDS. Both councils very clearly heard the direction from the community about growing up, not out, and that really means intensifying or growing within the current boundaries of these towns and the city. So providing for that intensification is a big part of the FDS. It was also important to look at the commercial and industrial land. So as you can see there, 88 hectares of commercial land, 50 hectares of industrial land. And that's, of course, to make sure that as the population grows, we have the services, the industries, and the commercial activities to support that. And we have the jobs that are in the right locations with that growing population. Okay, this is just a slide just to show you these documents and that they're real things that sit on shelves. The RMA has been around since 1991. It is due for replacement, and it seems very certain that will be replaced in the next few years by the government. We then have our local planning documents, the RPS that I mentioned, the Regional Policy Statement. That is the high-level document that's since the 1990s, and it's never been changed in that time. So it is quite dated in many respects. Possibly not in terms of some of our environmental pressures, but in terms of our growth and the let's say the urban side of things. We've changed a lot since the 90s. So we need to make an update there, which I'll come to. And then, of course, we've got the Tasman Resource Management Plan. And this is, as I mentioned, this is the planning document that provides a lot more detail. Okay, so just coming back to this diagram, same diagram on top here, but just want to expand on it and show that this Tasman Resource Management Plan here, which is, as I described it, being the engine room, this is a lot of the work that we're currently doing under that, and within that document. And here's Plan Change 81. This is one of the things we're talking about today. That's our growth work for the next 10 years for accommodating and providing for the growth that we're projecting. We've got work happening still on outstanding landscapes in the coastal environment. So that work is progressing as well. The land and freshwater plan change, there's a lot of work happening there around land and protection of fresh water. And then here's Plan Change 85, which Paul will be speaking about shortly. So that's a big piece of work that we're coming out to talk to the community about as well. And then other work streams such as the Mapua Master Plan is continuing, and that's reaching its conclusion. And we've got all sorts of other areas of work to keep us very busy. Oh, here we go. So just showing that this Tasman's Resource Management Plan includes a set of zones, it includes objectives, it includes a set of policies for all of those zones, and then finally rules. So those are the rules for each of those zones as to what can or can't happen. So that's really, as I say, the backbone of our planning system. Okay, why are we changing the TRPS? This is the higher level document. One of the things we have to do with our FDS is move the projected demand into our RPS. So that's under national legislation, that's something we have to do. So we will be including our dwelling numbers that are required to meet that demand over the next 30 years. We need to update the RPS to include the objectives of the FDS. The objectives are what guided the direction of that strategy. We want the RPS to reflect our greater range of dwelling types, our need for a greater range of dwelling types. And I'll come back to that point shortly as well. The RPS also needs to provide an assessment criteria for unanticipated plan changes. We do get what are called private plan changes and plan changes that are sort of out of development sequence. Sometimes these can be good, sometimes they can cause real problems. So we need to have some criteria to assess those. So that's something we're doing as well. And then kind of a bit of a geeky planning aspect here around a centres hierarchy to provide for the role and function. This is particularly relevant in Richmond, where we're starting to get multiple commercial centres with Berryfields and the Meadows and the town centre where it is, and then Champion Road. We need to be able to provide some planning guidance for what is the role and the function of each of those, and guidance so that one doesn't undermine the other. And then Plan Change 81, so this is getting down into more detail. What the objectives of Plan Change 81 are, firstly, to implement the first 10 years worth of capacity from the FDS. So as I mentioned before, the FDS doesn't do anything in itself, but it sets the framework. So we're taking the first 10 years out of that 30-year plan and making that happen on the ground by rezoning and providing some other changes. So that's for residential and business growth. Secondly, to increase the variety of homes. Now, this is really important because we have a lot of homes, but they're generally all of one type. They're detached, often 3, 4, possibly 5 bedroom homes on their own section. I don't know, typically 800, 1,000, 1,200 square meters. So we have a lot of that sort of product. We don't have much of the smaller typology, the 1 or 2 bedroom homes that might be self-contained. They might be duplexes or terraced homes. Easy maintenance, easy to leave, and much, as I say, easier maintenance. And that's what our aging population is really is looking for, is that kind of product. So we want to add to the variety of the homes that we have available, so people can choose what they want, where they want to live for their particular age and stage. And then finally, this point about the role and function of centres, that needs to be reflected in the TRMP as well. Continuing with what Plan Change 81 will do, we're planning at the moment to rezone quite a number of sites. There's 60 in total, but they're gathered up in lumps. Residential, commercial, and industrial zone is being provided, and in these towns here. So most of the towns and villages within Tasman. And through the questions, if you've got any particular questions about any of those towns, I'm happy to go to the maps that we've got as well. We've got those available. Plan Change 81 will also introduce a new medium density residential zone to enable good quality intensification. So the type of housing you might see on that slide there, and we're using that new zone in Richmond, Brightwater, Wakefield, Motueka, and Takaka. And the idea being to provide for more of that typology that I described, smaller homes with a more efficient use of the land. So just some other examples of what may develop. So maximum height of 3 stories, except within really inner Richmond, where 4 stories may be possible, but that will depend on the size of the site as well. Of course, there's other controls. Height isn't everything. There's also controls around daylight angle to ensure that the impact on any neighbours are not inappropriate. So yeah, not just height. There's a whole series of controls and provisions that have been set out around the bulk of the buildings, but also the design of the buildings. Plan Change 81 will also better enable papakāinga development. So Māori and iwi within Tasman have a number of areas of land that they'd like to develop as papakāinga. Papakāinga being multi-generational living, but it's more than just housing. It also can include aspects such as community activities, education, such as a kohanga reo or a marae, or a number of other activities that they may want to establish to really create that kind of that more traditional village type of living. Workers' accommodation, so whether this is RSE workers or others, the scope of Plan Change 81 is to provide more places where people can live. So we want to improve the rules around workers' accommodation so that they're more flexible and we can get more accommodation built for workers. As I mentioned, a commercial centres hierarchy, and then finally to increase building heights for the central business zone for Motueka and Richmond. So we want to enable a ground floor commercial tenancies and then 2 stories of residential tenancies above that. So we're just tweaking the rules there to enable that. Okay, so that's a quick summary of those changes. The timeframes for this, as I mentioned, the FDS was adopted in 2022. It's my mouse, there it is, 2022 here. We did some work specifically for Richmond about developing a Richmond spatial plan, and that was the Richmond on the Rise work. Then October last year, we released a heads up to the community that this was coming and to stay tuned. And since then, or long before then, we've been developing this plan change and working on all of this content and the policy direction that we need to go in. And here's our April 2025. This is our current engagement round for this draft plan change. Now, I just want to stress that it's a draft plan change. A plan change isn't final and formalized until it is publicly notified. So we are releasing this as a draft so that the community has got an opportunity to provide informal comment on that. And that's because we've still got the opportunity to change things. We don't get everything right, of course. And so we're interested in feedback on what we've got right, what we've got wrong, what we might need to change. Then we will be getting that feedback when it closes on the 5th of May. And then between May and July, we'll be looking at the feedback we've got, and I'll talk more about that in a second. And then we are aiming to notify Plan Change 81 and Change 1 in August or possibly very early September. And that will be the start of the formal legal process of opening up for submissions. Okay, so what happens after you've provided feedback? We will read all that feedback, we will pull it all together, we will compile that, and then we will go back to our councillors who set our direction. So we'll be putting all that feedback in front of them, as well as our recommendations on what direction to go, and then getting their direction, making any changes to the plan change, gaining any further data, information, evidence that we might need, and then ultimately seeking a resolution from council to publicly notify the changes, as I say, in August. Okay, there's one more thing that is not technically part of Plan Change 81, but we are using this opportunity going out to the public to talk about, and that's about housing in rural areas. So we want to go to the community and ask for your feedback on our rules for rural areas. Currently in rural zones, and by that I mean Rural 1 zone, Rural 2 zone, Rural 3 zone, which is in the coastal Moutere area, and our rural residential zones, you can only build one home as of right. that's essentially allowed. Any further homes require resource consent. Those rules can be changed, and councillors have asked us to look at that and to talk to the community about that. So we're really asking the question, should the council change the planning rules to make it easier to build second homes on rural properties? And that is, for us, that means without resource consent. So essentially it's a permitted activity to have a second dwelling on a rural site. What are the questions we're asking about that? What are the potential benefits that you could see? What are the potential problems or undesirable effects that could occur? So recognizing that if you can do it on your site, then of course your neighbours can do it too. So you need to balance how this plays out in the rural environment. What conditions or controls do you think would be the most important to retain? So with a permitted activity, we can put conditions on that around setbacks and other aspects. So what do you think is the most important there? And as I mentioned, it's not currently part of Plan Change 81, but we really want to get your feedback on that. There will be, many of you may have seen in the media that there's the granny flat legislation is coming, and that will change things in this direction anyway, but it may not go as far as we want it to go. So this input is really valuable, because then once we've seen that granny flat legislation, then we can see if we want to go further or not. And that is me. So I think it's best, yes, if we hand over to Paula to go through the natural hazards plan change issues and options, and then we'll come back to any questions on either of these processes that we're talking about. So I will turn my camera off and I'll hand over to Paula.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. Yes, my name is Paula Hammond. I am one of the policy planners in the environmental policy team here at Tasman District Council, and I am working on the natural hazards plan change. This plan change is right at the very beginning of the process, where we look at what the issues are, what are the outcomes that we want to achieve, and what at a high level are the options that we could manage the effects of the natural hazards through the Tasman District Plan. Jeremy, if we can switch to the next slide, please. So why do we need to do natural hazards plan change? Well, ultimately, we want to ensure that any new development is resilient to the effects of natural hazards, and essentially avoid putting more people and property in harm's way. Also, as time goes on, we're able to collect more information and have a better understanding of the environment that we're in, and the changes that are happening. And so therefore we have better technical information, which we can now incorporate into our plan. The district plan is also, in some areas, has inefficiencies and issues that we would like to fix up with respect to the natural hazards provisions. There has also been a significant amount of national direction that we will need to give effect to. We are also expecting, or we had expected by the state, the government to put in place a new national direction for natural hazards. That has not yet happened, but we understand it is imminent. So we would look to incorporate that. And finally, community expectations are changing, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that people are wanting to be assured that where they are building and living is resilient to natural hazards, and certainly the severe weather events in the North Island have highlighted this for us. So this plan change is covering 6 different natural hazards, the 3 geological hazards: liquefaction, earthquake, fault rupture, slope instability, as well as coastal flooding and erosion, river flooding and overland flow paths, as well as wildfire. It's not covering tsunamis, wind or drought. We can go to the next slide, thank you. So as I said at the beginning, this plan change is right in its infancy. So we have, there are no rules drafted or changes to zones or anything like that. right at the beginning of the process. So all of that development of the draft plan changes is yet to come. So we are looking at your feedback on the issues and the options, which will then inform how we develop the rules and the plan change that will follow. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just to reiterate again, the feedback that we're seeking, have we identified the issue correctly for each hazard? And is the outcome what you think it should be? And at a high level, is the preferred option that we have come up with to manage the effects of those hazards appropriate, or should it be something else? Once the feedback closes, again, same date as Plan Change 81 on the 5th of May, we will compile all of that feedback and report back to Council. And then the Council decisions as a result of that feedback will give us direction on whether those preferred options that we've put in the issues and options report progress, or whether we need to change tack slightly and look at something slightly different. And once we have that direction from Council, we will begin to draft those plan change provisions. We will undertake, once we have progressed with that draft provisions, we will come back to the community to test those provisions and ask for feedback on those before moving into the next stage of the planning process. Thanks, Jeremy. And just to wrap up, I just wanted to highlight that we have a new natural hazards map viewer on our website. This map viewer brings together a lot of the information that we had available across the various bits of our website, but it shows the information that we have available on natural hazards. So it shows you can look up different sea level rise scenarios in half-metre increments. It has information on our flood models, as well as shows the extent of historical flood maps. And it also shows where the fault lines, the known fault lines that we have across the district. So you can type in your address and click on the various tabs and see what hazards may be around your area. There's also a short video on there that shows you how to turn the layers on and off and generally navigate around the map itself. And that's a wrap from me. So thank you for your time, and I'll hand back over to John to facilitate some questions.
Thanks, Paula. Just before we leave natural hazards for a moment, when you were out and about doing the Meet the Planners, the community engagement, what were kind of like did you find there were like 3 natural hazards that people were most concerned about, and why?
It really varied across the district. We hopefully had a good coverage of our drop-in sessions. In St Arnaud, there were some questions, particularly around the geology and the geological hazards there, around liquefaction and fault rupture. In Motueka, significant questions around sea level rise. Yeah, so it kind of, yes, each drop-in had its own kind of questions, and Motueka was also about flooding.
I also found it interesting at one of the drop-ins, somebody asked, Jeremy, and this is a question to you, how is the work that's being done around issues and options, did that sort of feed into the PC81 work when you're looking at new places to zone for different reasons?
Yes, absolutely. So while there's a lot of hazards work going on at the moment, that's really the planning response to those hazards. We, of course, had a lot of information available to us, technical information for developing the future development strategy. So all of the FDS sites were were assessed against natural hazards to ensure that any growth locations weren't in hazard-prone locations. So yeah, that underlying hazard information has been a constant source of information both through Plan Change 81 and also now leading into 85 as well.
Also, a lot of discussion, and I know that you are very excited by this, if I can use excited here, medium density residential zone, and this is going to allow a lot of growth for us. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I'm terribly excited by it. Medium density is really a different form of housing than we've traditionally seen. It's the type of thing, I'm sure if people have been to Christchurch recently or a number of the other cities, but it's particularly evident in Christchurch, you'll see examples of it. It's not for everybody and it's not for everywhere, but it's a type of housing that will enable more people to live within the urban centres that we have, and particularly within Richmond, Brightwater, Wakefield, and also some appropriate locations in Takaka and Motueka. And in doing so, it strengthens a number of aspects. It's great from a transportation point of view. There's less need to drive. It's easier to walk and cycle to the shops or to the movies or to sports practice or to your work. It's a more efficient use of the land, and it's part of that sort of inner town living for us. You know, in the cities, it's more like inner city living, and you get the benefits of that. But for here, it's really and the other benefit, of course, is that it's more affordable for our infrastructure, as the more we spread out, the more kit that we've got in the ground, the more infrastructure, the more pipes that we've got to maintain on a long-term basis. It means that our roads and all those pipes and that infrastructure can be more efficiently used. So from a number of aspects, it's a great way to build.
So definitely this is future focus, and we need more housing, don't we? We need it for a number of reasons. So we've got more people coming here.
Yep.
Also, we want to keep our kids, we want to keep the future generations working and living here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about, really, is providing for the growth that we are expecting. Now, this growth is it's not necessarily people coming from overseas. There's a very small element of that, but predominantly the internal migration that we're getting that I mentioned in my presentation, it's people relocating from other places in New Zealand, and stereotypically, we can say it's a lot of people retiring, baby boomer generation retiring, potentially selling their large house, probably freehold or close to it, in other parts of New Zealand, and coming here and therefore being able to invest in a home here. Now, if we don't provide for enough homes, then it's probably the local younger people who work in our local shops, work as our local tradies, and so on and so forth, teachers, whatever, who won't be able to compete with those sorts of prices. So if we don't provide enough homes and there's a scarcity of homes, those people that I just described, then they have to try and look for somewhere if they want to get on the property ladder or even have somewhere to live, even if it's rental. So they might be having to look at the West Coast or Invercargill or somewhere where house prices are more affordable. So by providing that enough homes, where, just as you say, John, we're able to enable people to live here where their families are, where their jobs are, where their roots are, and their whakapapa. So that's a really important aspect of this.
And we saw in St. Arnaud and in Takaka, the community centres that are being built there. They have these multi-purpose squash courts and being used by everybody. It was just, this sort of growth for Tasman development in that area, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It means we can use those more. It means they're more affordable. The community facilities that go along with that growth as a positive as well.
And Paula, to you, when people are, of course, thinking now, I'll build somewhere or I'll move somewhere, just this natural hazards map viewer, I've used it a couple of times. I think it's really great. And you're dead right. That video that explains how to use it all is mighty, because we're now able to surface information that we've had, but the process has not been so easy to get to. It's a lot more intuitive now.
Yeah, it is a lot more intuitive. And as I said, it's now all in one single location. And that was one of the things that surprised me about the drop-in centres, was that a number of people had looked at the map viewer and had specific questions about what that information meant for them
Yep.
and their property. And that service still exists. You don't have to come to a drop-in session. There,
Yep.
on that, the page that the map viewer is on is an email address that if you have any queries and want further information on or a better understanding of what that map viewer is telling you, then you can email that to find out more information.
Now, in talking to a few people who come away from the drop-in centres, the calls, they were saying to me like slope instability was one thing, sea level rise was another. Was that a, were you surprised by people's questions about this area or thoughts on that?
Sea level rise is a difficult one because it's projecting out into the future. Although we have measured sea level rise and what is currently happening, and perhaps I could pass over to Alistair Clement, the team leader of our natural hazards team, and he can perhaps talk a little bit more about sea level rise.
Thanks, Paula. Yeah, I think one thing that might surprise people is that sea level rise, it's measurable and it's actually happening around the district at the moment, and we have measured it. So it's not just a theoretical thing that's projected to happen into the future. So we've got NIWA to do an analysis of the 3 tide gauges that we have across the district. There's one at Port Nelson, there's one at Little Kaiterikiri, and there's one at Port Tarakoe. And NIWA's done an analysis of those tide gauge records, and those records, particularly from Little Kaiterikiri and Tarakoe, show that sea level, their relative mean sea level, and I'll just talk about what that means in a second, but sea level has risen by about 140 to 150 millimetres, or 14 to 15 centimetres, since 2004. So that's that's quite a good amount. So on average, about 9 millimetres a year. And there's a couple of things that's going on there. One is that the volume of water in the oceans is causing the ocean surface to rise. And the other thing that might be going on there is that the land is going down a bit. And there's been a lot of reporting in the last couple of years about what we call vertical land movement, which includes this subsidence effect where the land goes down. And that causes us to experience an accelerated amount of sea level rise. So that might surprise some people that we have measured sea level rise around the district. It is actually happening at the moment at about 9 millimetres a year. And we've had about 150 millimetres since 2004.
Thanks, Alistair. Well, I think with that and this information here we've got today, we're at a good point here probably to wrap up this session. I would like to first of all just recommend that Shape Tasman is the place where you can get a lot of this information. There's videos, there's all the documentation to be able to do the engagement for PC 81 and 85. But before we go, I'd just like to get a wrap up from first of all, Jeremy, if you could, just thinking about what you've heard today and your thoughts from the drop-in sessions that we did. Yeah, are you satisfied that people kind of have got it, who like understand where we're going with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. We've had a great series of drop-in sessions. We've had, I think everybody understands the need for that growth. They understand that we've balanced together a lot of factors. So, when we're doing this kind of work, we are weighing up we've got this imperative around growth and trying to keep house prices down, under control, and have places for people to live. And then we've got to balance that with productive land. We've got to balance it with jobs, industrial activities, industrial land, commercial land. This thing's an ecosystem, right? It all goes together. It's not just one aspect. So I think people have understood that. We've had some aspects around heritage, making sure that some of our important heritage isn't lost through redevelopment. So we've absolutely taken that on board. But overall, yeah, we've had really positive feedback with the direction we're going. So it's good.
That's great, Paula. Well, just before we get a summary from you, Paula, just a quick question we've got in here. From Bruce, the Pacific Palisades fire showed how street layout and hills can prevent evacuation and first response to occur efficiently. Is TDC changing street rules to accommodate evacuation?
Oh, that is definitely something that we will be looking at as part of this plan change. So, Bruce, if you'd like to provide that feedback through the formal mechanisms, we'd really welcome that. Thank you.
I can also just say that a number of the sites we're progressing through with Plan Change 81 currently as well. That's been the feedback from our transportation planner, Bill, who I don't think is on the line today, but Bill has advised us when we've been developing indicative road layouts. So often when we'll rezone a location, we'll provide an indicative road layout. And absolutely one of the key things that he's been looking for is to make sure that with new developments that there's a way in and there's a way out. Well, the way in and out isn't the same way. There's multiple ways to get in and out of an area. So yeah, we're looking at that, as Paula says, from a broader strategic point of view, but also quite specifically with development locations. We'll make sure that we haven't got large cul-de-sacs that are sort of can be sealed off.
There is just a little bit more. Bruce has said, have the following descriptions, and he has things in the Q&A here, but basically the issues that arose from the Lahaina and Pacific Palisades fires, I mean, will they be considered in the proposed plan changes? Is this something you want to get into feedback and onto Shape Tasman right now?
Yeah, all feedback is valuable. And as I said, we're right at the beginning of this process. So if there's information that you think that we need to be taking into account, then by all means highlight it. And thank you for putting the links into the chat, and we will definitely take those on board and put them in the mix with everything else that we need to consider.
All right, well, I think that brings us to a close for this webinar. A recording of it will be available online at Shape Tasman later this afternoon. And you can also make submissions to both PC 81 and 85 there until Monday, May the 5th. So it's my pleasure to thank you all for joining us this afternoon and to wish you all a safe and enjoyable Easter break.